All right, so we made it through a whole bunch of pretty theoretical crap there for the last whatever it was, 6 lessons or something. Variables, functions, objects, arrays, parameters, blah, 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 strings. There's so much terminology that you got to learn. These are called languages, and there's a good reason because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. They have very particular ways you have to reference things. There's basically grammar in them, and there's all kinds of special words that you've heard before, but you don't really use in normal everyday language. This is why programmers can kind of make their own little jokes, and they're kind of all in their own weird little world. So now we've done a whole bunch of stuff that seems kind of useless at this point, adding up numbers or just picking random words from functions and stuff. So why is JavaScript in the browser? Why do we have to learn all this stuff? And what does this have to do with actual web development? Well, we're going to start getting into that. Some of the reason that we had to go over that is so that when I teach you this next part, you're not just totally confused as to what I'm doing, and all the language that I'm using isn't just totally out of left field. So the big reason that we use JavaScript is because JavaScript interacts with HTML the same way that CSS can interact with HTML. JavaScript can interact with HTML. It can pick specific elements that are on the page by specific tags. It can change the text in them. It can make them move around. You can change color. You can listen to see if somebody is clicking or not, and then do something when they click. There's all kinds of cool stuff that JavaScript lets you do when it comes to actually working with your HTML. And that's the reason that we actually have to learn JavaScript if we want to do web development. So let's try just doing a little bit of this stuff where we actually have something to do with the HTML we already made. So there are some functions that are super useful that are built right into JavaScript that let us target certain things on the page and do stuff with them. Okay, so what am I talking about? Well, let's just write some and kind of see what happens. So one thing I can do is I can listen for a click event. This is something that's really valuable overall, and we're just going to give it a shot. It's a little bit complicated in terms of how it's written, but I think it's good because it's just so useful. So we have to say document.getElementById. Now this is a predefined function that exists in JavaScript. The same way that we had console.log, we have one called document.getElementById. Now, you can guess what this does. It gets an element by the ID. Okay, so we have a couple things that we have IDs on. One is the equals button. So let's put that in here. We tell it what ID we want it to get, okay? And now we're going to do something that is a little bit crazy, which is we're going to do this thing called add listener, okay? What we're doing is we're adding a thing that's going to listen for a click event. So we're adding listener. We're going to call it a click event, which is, again, a predefined thing. And then we're going to give it a function, and we're just going to say console log clicked when the click happens. So what we've told this here is we've said, oh, document dot, when again, that's our dot notation from the object, get element by ID, which is a predefined function in JavaScript, which then has an additional little thing on it that we can do dot add listener. We can tell the listener to listen for a click, and it will execute the function every time it's clicked. You don't need to know all the details about how this works. Why is there a dot after this thing that's a function, and why is it add listener? You can just get this answer online by looking up, how do I know if someone clicked something with JavaScript? That's the key. We're going for the functionality first, the practical thing. So let's see if this worked. We're going to save it. We're going to reload. We're going to open it up, and oh, we see I made an error. Add listener here is not a function. So it's telling us, hey, you're trying to do this function, but it doesn't exist. Now, I made a mistake here, and it's actually called add event listener. So how would I figure that out? Well, I look up how to add click listener JavaScript, and we would find that, and there would be, oh, there's an example here in the Mozilla thing. It says add event listener, and they'll probably have an example down here somewhere. I don't know where one is, but whatever. They have an add event listener example, whatever. Here's our example in any case. So I'm going to resave that, and we're going to reload it. So we have that here, and now if we are going to click the equals button, do we get it clicking? You can see here it clicked. I clicked it twice, and it twice said clicked. So we just connected our JavaScript to our HTML by adding this get element by ID, and then this add event listener thing, which listened for the click event. Now, there's other stuff we can do. Let's give an ID to our text input already has an ID. One thing that we can do with JavaScript as well is we can set the value of certain things. So for instance, I can say document.getElement by ID, and I'm going to get this text input, and then I'm going to say .value equals hello. And we're just going to save that and load it. And you can see here, it changed this to hello. So that just happens right on load. I could set the value of this text input by doing this .value. Okay, so you have to like know all this stuff. You can't just like guess at it. You have to look it up and figure out, oh, what's the command to put a value into the text input. And in the details of this, it's not really useful. Like, yeah, it's good to know how to add a click listener. We're going to do that in various ways, but there's easier ways to do it later on. And there's easier ways to set the value of a text input. We're going to look at those easier ways, and that's what we're actually going to use later. But the key here is that I want you to get the idea that we can do this, that JavaScript is used in order to interact with the HTML. Now, the term we use to describe the HTML is called the DOM, the Document Object Model. You don't really have to know what that means, but that term DOM is basically short for the HTML and all the stuff in there. And JavaScript can do different things with it. And there's a lot more that we can do than I've just showed you here with setting value. We could change colors, we could make the page flash, we could draw things on the page. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. All the stuff that you see on the internet is ultimately boiled down to these kinds of things, of interaction between the JavaScript and your page. So I hope you get the general idea there. Again, don't worry too much about understanding exactly what the get element by ID and the event listener and blah, blah, blah. Just take the general idea. We will go into easier ways to do this that are a bit more intuitive using some other helper JavaScript later on. But you get the idea, and we'll see you in the next one where we start applying this a little bit to our calculator.